Thank you, Mr. Speaker, with apologies.
So I will allow comments for 15 minutes on the statements that have been sought, starting with Senator Chute.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I rise in support of the statement by Honorable Senator from Narok. Honorable Speaker, I want to first of all congratulate the current CEO who comes from Marsabit County, Dr. Wako Ejersa, who was just recently now in charge of the Kemsa organization. Honorable Speaker, recently in Marsabit we received drugs worth 45 million, and that is thanks to Kemsa. And I'm really very grateful. But the problem that Kemsa has is tracking of those medicines. What Senator Lidama is trying to bring to the House is from the factory to Kemsa, and from Kemsa to the county headquarters, from the county headquarters to the district hospitals, health centers, and dispensaries. That is where we have a very big problem. And we need to have a situation where from the factory up to the user point, the medicines, the drugs are being monitored, and the issue that is now happening in our counties are drugs are being sold to chemists around town. Honorable Speaker, if you go to hospitals, health centers, and dispensaries in most of the counties, you don't find anything. Even Panadol, you will not get. Basically, what they are doing is monitoring is the biggest problem we are facing in distribution of drugs to our counties. Again, Honorable Speaker, what I would suggest the committee should look at is formation of committees from Kemsa up to the level of dispensaries, so that the drugs can be monitored. If the drugs are delivered to a specific institution, the committees should know, verify that this type of drugs are here, and when it is prescribed, they should also look at what was the prescription for the whole week and how much is left in the store. If you don't have this kind of monitoring, Honorable Speaker, then the use of medicine, the supply is a problem. Honorable Speaker, again, what we need to look at is this. There is a pending bill in terms of billions of shillings, which is supposed to be payable to Kemsa. And I would want the committee, health committee, to ascertain what counties have what pending bills and why do they have those pending bills. If you look at level 4 hospitals, the patients pay for the drugs that are prescribed. So why should we have hospitals not paying or counties not paying their dues to Kemsa? And finally, I think what the committee should look at is the pending bills that were there. They are there for how long? Some are for 3 years, 4 years. Why should it be there? They are supposed to pay and collect their drugs. If they don't pay, how is Kemsa going to manage the outstanding pending bills which are supposed to be paid by the counties? So I think what Senator Lidama is trying to do is monitoring what is happening from the factory up to the end user. And again, he has said something very, very important. You see, the issue of Kemsa having, they normally deliver drugs to destination. to the last mile. If they are delivering to the last mile, somebody at the last mile should know that what has left the factory through Kemsa office has reached to the last mile. That is the monitoring he's asking for. That way, I think value for money will be achieved. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Faki.
Mheshimiwa Spika, asante kwa kunipa fursa hii. Ningependa kuchangia taarifa kuhusiana na mambo ya mahakama ambayo ilikuwa imeletwa bungeni na Senator Ojenda. Mheshimiwa Spika, kumeingia mtafaruku katika tume ya mahakama kutokana na kesi ambazo zimepelekwa mahakamani na majaji wa mahakama ya upeo kabisa ya Supreme Court ambayo inahusiana na masuala ya hatua za nidhamu ambazo zilikuwa zinachukuliwa na tume ya uajiri wa majaji. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni masikitiko kuwa jaji mkuu pia amekwenda mahakamani kuzuia tume ambayo anaiongoza kuchukua hatua za kinidhamu kuhusiana na madai ambayo yameletwa kwa tume hiyo na baadhi ya mawakili wakuu katika nchi hii yetu ya Kenya. Mheshimiwa Spika, si jambo la sawa kwamba kiongozi wa tume anapeleka kesi mbele ya majaji ambao wanaajiriwa na tume. Japokuwa Mheshimiwa Spika, majaji wana uhuru wa kazi, inakuwa si sawa kwa sababu majaji wale wanamwangalia jaji mkuu kama mtu ambaye ni kiongozi wao, na kwa hivyo labda hawezi kutoa amri ambayo itakuwa ni kinyume na yale maombi ambayo jaji mkuu ameweza kuyaomba. Mheshimiwa Spika, masuala haya ni mazito na nafikiri itataka kamati husika yetu ya haki na ya sheria na haki za binadamu kulivalia njuga swala hili kwa haraka, kwa sababu ni jambo ambalo litaweza kupunguza imani ya wananchi katika mahakama zetu. Mheshimiwa Spika, ikiwa mtu anatuhuma kwamba jaji fulani ameamua au amepokea hongo ama amefanya mambo kinyume na maadili ya kikazi, ni muhimu masuala hayo yachunguzwe kwa haraka ili uamuzi uweze kupatikana. Itakuwa si sawa jaji yule aendelee kuhudumu, Mheshimiwa Spika, wakati tume inaburuta miguu kuweza kusikiza madai yale na aidha kuamuru kwamba hakuna mashtaka ama mashtaka yapo na watoe mapendekezo kwa rais aweze kuweka tume ambayo itaweza kuchunguza jaji yule kwa haraka iwezekanavyo. Kwa Mheshimiwa Spika, haya masuala ambayo yako sasa yanapunguza imani ya wananchi katika mahakama zetu. Kwa hivyo inafaa yachunguzwe haraka na kamati yetu ya sheria na haki za binadamu ili kuweza kujulikana usawa uko pande gani. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Senator Veronica Maina.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of the statement that has been brought to this House by Senator Ledama seeking some answers to the question of how Kemsa is rolling out its program and provision of drugs that are being used in the counties. Honorable Speaker, time has now come, Honorable Speaker, and I encourage that committee, health committee, that when they are working on this statement, that they ensure that the system that is being run by Kemsa is open and accountable. The procurement process is something that can be explained to Kenyans, starting from the whole supply chain of those drugs, Honorable Speaker, from when Kemsa orders for this, procures for these drugs, up to the time when they are taken to the county and distributed to the health center. It's unfortunate, Honorable Speaker, that the healthcare system, when you go to the counties, you will find many health centers do not have drugs, actually. In fact, it becomes very embarrassing when you go down to those health centers in the villages and you find you cannot, even simple medicine that could assist the citizens is not even available. what is the inventory management system that is being used, Honorable Speaker, by Kemsa? This is something that must be investigated. You were not here yesterday. If you were here, Honorable Speaker, the CS for Health was before this House, and the queries she answered in respect to SHA, many of them were not satisfactorily answered, Honorable Speaker, because starting from the genesis of how contributions are being done, the repayment of the debt that is outstanding, now we have the Kemsa debt which remains unpaid even by counties, and then we have the NHIF, the debt that was accrued by NHIF. Honorable Speaker, if you listen to the deep questions that are coming within the healthcare system, it looks like work is cut out for the health committee as they look at this statement and the question of SHA. Because if the healthcare system fails a nation, then which other system would we say is working properly within our republic? So I would first urge the health committee to ensure that when they return the report on this statement, we can see a whole audit of all the counties. Let us name and shame counties that are not willing to give basic services to wananchi down there. We need to stop answering the same question, why hospitals do not have Panados, Honorable Speaker. Why hospitals do not have basic emergency care for people who could even be rescued and saved. We are risking the lives of Kenyans. So I want to ask the health committee, when they sit on this, check the inventory, the order management system within Kemsa, ensure that they are presenting a system that is foolproof and one that closes out any form of corruption, so that if we require medication going down to the health centers, we stop having people at the top level diverting funds that are intended to fund the healthcare system within our nation. So I support that statement coming from Senator Ledama, and this is a question we must be very serious about, Honorable Speaker. By the time we are done with our tenure, our 5-year tenure, we should be also able to account as a Senate. What have we done to improve that health care? What have we done to improve the water system? What have we done to ensure that basic provisions that are supposed to go to Kenyans are actually delivered to Kenyans without further delay, without further excuses, without further explanations? Let officers who are seated in government offices ensure that you can yourself take accountability for your office and say, during my term of office, I'm not explaining I was asked to do this or to do that. Just get the right thing done and deliver Article 43 to Kenyans. That's what we are looking for. Even the president, that is what he's looking for. He's not looking for workers who are explaining this and that every day. Like if you look at the SHA system, Honorable Speaker, if you look at the SHIF, and the 3 funds that are supposed to come under the new healthcare system, we need those issues fixed. If it's a debt that needs to be restructured in NHIF, let it be restructured. But all Kenyans want to do, they don't care what you do with the systems, with the processes, how you review the workforce, how you review the human resource capital. All they care for is an adequate service delivery that renders service to Mwananchi. Honorable Speaker, many of us were raised in situations where we only went to government hospitals. We never saw private hospitals until we were this age, when we have now seen the Aga Khan, the Nairobi Hospital. All of us have gone through those level 2, level 1, level what? The public institutions, and those institutions must be made to work. And it is our work as oversighters to ensure that they work. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Eddy.
Mr. Speaker, you know, in the private sector is where we always see serious innovation going, to the extent that that kind of innovation, when you see it in the legislative houses like where we are, you get very proud, especially when you come from a tech background that I come from. I get really happy when I see a legislature like what Senator Ledama Lekina has proposed here, a brilliant idea to deal with a serious crisis that we have in this nation, the management and the delivery of drugs to our people. Mr. Speaker, the way Kemsa currently works is very simple. but very, very inefficient and ineffective. Currently, Kemsa has got contract with manufacturers of drugs and pharmaceuticals companies. Then Kemsa buys drugs from these pharmaceutical companies on credit. Usually, the terms of the credit that they get from these pharmaceutical companies range between 90 to 120 days. Once Kemsa has bought these drugs from these companies on credit, then Kemsa sells those drugs to county governments as well as national institutions such as the referral hospitals that we have in the country, also on credit. And that credit for Kemsa, it is dependent upon the exchequer releases that we have. And now, Mr. Speaker, you know very well that exchequer problems in this country sometimes span beyond the gap that you have of 90 to 120 days. We have seen sometimes delays of funds going to even 6 months when people have not been paid, to the extent that some government, county governments receive their monies when they're just in time to close a financial year, to the extent that even absorption becomes a problem. This is a problem because then it means two things, Mr. Speaker. Number one, it means that once Kemsa has bought those drugs from the manufacturers, it takes the ownership of those drugs, to the extent that if a drug is going to expire, and sometimes even some medical equipment like what we saw with masks during the COVID period, if those medical facilities and the medical drugs are going to expire, they expire under the ownership of Kemsa, not under the ownership of the manufacturers or the pharmaceutical companies. Then what will force Kemsa to do in a marketplace? What is going to happen is that Kemsa will then take those nearly expiring drugs and nearly expiring equipment and then donate them to different county governments because they tend to de-risk their portfolio. So what is Senator Ledama proposing here? Senator Ledama is proposing that through this enterprise resource planning software, which I don't believe that Kemsa has currently, and that should actually be something that Senator Ledama actually should sit in that committee and propose strongly. What you're going to do is that you create a marketplace, and then Kemsa now becomes a marketplace where they have got a warehouse where you can actually just store drugs and list the drugs that manufacturers have. Once you list them, manufacturers then take the ownership of these drugs, and Kemsa only facilitates the transactions on that platform. What this will help with, Mr. Speaker, is that, number one, you will take the ownership of drugs from Kemsa, so that ownership lies with the manufacturer, so that any kind of risk and liabilities, both for credit as well as expiration of drugs and medical equipment, do not sit on Kemsa. But most importantly, you give an avenue of such an innovative fund as SHA now to facilitate counties to acquire those drugs on that platform. Because now, what will happen is that SHA, which is already a fund, an authority that establishes a fund, can now fund counties directly, so that hospitals can simply go to this marketplace that Senator Ledama is creating for us as a country, and then choose the panel that you need, choose the medicine that you need, and then the payment is facilitated on that platform, just as you'll do with M-Pesa in this country, Mr. Speaker, in other businesses that we have seen. So this is a very brilliant idea, Mr. Speaker, that I think that above just the idea of facilitating a proper transaction that avoids risks, it also ensures that there's now audit trail, that you can now be able to audit and track drugs from where they come from manufacturer, goes all the way to the hospitals. This is one of the most brilliant ideas that has come from this house, Mr. Speaker, that I want to encourage the committee, that they take it seriously and let us as a house follow it through and see it come to fruition, so that one day we can have a country where we say that the access to drugs is no longer a problem because it was solved on the basis of innovation that came from this house. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to contribute on the statement by Honorable on the Kala-azar issue. Honorable Speaker, the Kala-azar issue, is a disease actually that's caused by, it's actually called another name, is the black fever. It has a very high fever like malaria, and it's one of the deadliest diseases actually that is actually recently found. Kala-azar actually has occurred in Kenya, I think not more than 15 years ago. And it has not up to now been controlled, and it's caused by biting flies, especially dry times, when the areas are dry and there's a lot of scarcity. There's also deforestation. These flies breed very fast, and mostly it affects the young children. Honorable Speaker, the disease is actually a very stubborn disease that people, the malnourished kids mostly, and people affected by HIV/AIDS cannot be able to tolerate it. But the problem is actually controlling system is actually very poor in Kenya. And the only thing we do is that we need to control it. Because actually it's a recent development, because it came all the way from our border lines like Somalia and Ethiopia. It has not been there for a long time in Kenya. And I think the best thing is to control this disease so that it doesn't spread towards the other part of the country. It's now in the northern part, and there's a need to at least control it and use all measures to have this disease controlled. Otherwise it is a very dangerous, like malaria, and worse than malaria at times. On the same breath, Honorable Speaker, I want also to contribute to Senator Olekina's statement. Honorable Speaker, Kemsa actually is doing a very wonderful job, and is able to supply this country medicine in the far-fetched areas. It delivers up to the last mile. But however, it lacks a proper tracking system. The drugs have been loaded from Nairobi all the way up to the dispensaries and health centers, far-fetched areas. It is not inspected, and it's not actually even the counties don't even have control out of it, because they give orders, and at times, since it is delivered up to the end, the last mile areas, sometimes they deliver even the wrong drugs to those places. And therefore, it's a high time that Kemsa should be able to be seen, to be oversighted, and be able to get the rightful drugs. And the counties should also take responsibility for these drugs, because most of the times, these drugs, most of them are not branded. And you see here, sometimes these drugs end up in the private hospitals and the private pharmacies, and therefore, the counties are losing a lot of drugs as a result of theft. And therefore, what we need to do is that as senators, we also need to follow up these issues and see to it that these drugs are delivered appropriately, and Kemsa should give out or engage some drug inspectors, so at least they can know how much of the drug reaches the people. Thank you very much, Mr. Honorable Speaker.
Senator Beatrice Kenya.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to support two statements. One, the one by Senator Chute, and the one by the Minority Whip, Senator Olekina. Honorable Speaker, if there's an outbreak, as is indicated by Senator Chute, it is an issue that should be addressed as quickly as possible. Honorable Speaker, in the past we have seen how such diseases ravage our populations. By the description given by Senator Chute, it is a disease that causes a lot of damage to internal organs, Honorable Speaker, and so I support the fact that there must be an urgent action towards addressing that, not only in Marsabit, Honorable Speaker, but the Public Health Directorate must go ahead to safeguard even other counties that surround Marsabit, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I now support the statement by Senator Olekina. Honorable Speaker, health is so crucial to our populations. If you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, every person in the world, if not in this country, is entitled to good health and well-being, Honorable Speaker. And so any actions or activities by Kemsa as a distributor of drugs to our health facilities must be something that we as a House and everybody else must pay attention to. All we are asking for is that Kemsa needs to increase its efficiencies so that our people get drugs in time and on need, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'm more concerned about this because health and women are so related, Honorable Speaker, that issues that touch on health, touch on children, and touch on women more because of the kind of attention that women have with their children and the general households. Honorable Speaker, it is a common occurrence that in our health centers, a number of times there are shortage of drugs. And as a house, we are really concerned that our people should go to hospitals and then because of inefficiencies or lack of clear administration of the distribution of drugs, our people are always running to chemists or to commercial outfits to secure drugs, Honorable Speaker. And so I support this, that Kemsa and the county governments must work on an efficient and effective way that would lead to availability of drugs in our hospitals. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Senator Boni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to laud Senator Chute. This is a very sad occurrence. As a medical expert, I can confirm to the nation that the breakout of Kala-azar is a symptom of a failed state. Kala-azar, otherwise called black fever, Mr. Speaker, or leishmaniasis, is a tropical illness that occurs where the health system has collapsed. In Africa, you find it in South Sudan and in the Sudan. How did Kenya find itself where it is now being compared to South Sudan? Mr. Speaker, this disease is so lethal that out of 20 people infected, if not rapidly attacked, 19 of them die. That is what we are leaving the people of Marsabit to undergo. Mr. Speaker, I therefore want to inform the ministry that we know these things. In fact, in the year 2020, Mr. Speaker, a vaccine against Kala-azar was developed and approved by the WHO. The licensing of this vaccine has not taken place in Kenya because of busybodies, either they want to be bribed before they can license and what have you. Let this vaccine be licensed in this country and be applied. And what is more, the Kenya Kwanza government has been very successful on the issue of primary health care through the stipend being paid to community health promoters. This is a disease that can actually be cleared by that level of intervention, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what do I mean? All that the CPIs are supposed to tell the patients is that cover yourself with a piece of cloth, including a long one, because the vectors that transmit these parasites are sandflies. The CPIs can actually, with the support of the ministry, and this is why I'm talking of a failed state, can actually just spray. You spray the sandflies and they go away. Mr. Speaker, you can use minimal cost to ensure that people sleep in protected bedrooms, and where you don't have high-tech bedrooms like nets.
What is your point of order, Senator Mandago?
Honorable Speaker, I didn't wish to disrupt Senator Boli Alwale, who is a medical expert. But I've been debating understatement of facts, whether really the spread of Kala-azar in Marsabit is a symbol of a failed state, or a failed county, considering that the function of health, largely for that function, is devolved? Maybe some clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Speaker, indeed the chairman of health is right. I should swallow my words on failed state and say a failed county compared to failed states like South Sudan and Sudan. And I'm very professional on this matter and authoritative, because these sandflies, once they bite the patient, the black fever parasites then target the spleen and target the liver. Mr. Speaker, you cannot find spleen transplant or liver transplant anywhere in this country. It therefore means once your liver is gone, your spleen is gone, you are a dead man. I'm therefore not surprised that sometimes we get a lot of anger from the people who come from the so-called, the former Northern Frontier districts. It is because of this treatment. And the governor of Marsabit, Senator Mandako, you should summon this boss. They tell us where they take the money that is budgeted for health. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether it is true, I don't want to be challenged, but on the grapevine here in the streets, we are being told that some of these high-rise flats that are coming up, they are properties of governors. It is? Yes, this is what I'm hearing. So they are taking money, coming to invest in Eastleigh, coming to invest in South Sea. Mr. Speaker, we refuse. Our people deserve this treatment. And Mr. Speaker, let me go to Kemsa. Kemsa, I think the people in charge at Kemsa are not competent, because the drugs and the policy for stocking at Kemsa deliberately ensures that drugs against tropical illnesses like malaria, like Kala-azar, like tuberculosis are readily available. I know for a fact that when I was practicing medicine actively, you would go to Kemsa and the drug, the primary drug, which is very cheap, called amphotericin, was there in Kemsa. So if they are not stocking it, it means the blocks who have been given that job are not competent. We should stop the culture of people who have lost elections to be in charge of critical institutions like Kemsa, and allow doctors and nurses to be the ones to be in charge of those places, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Ledama Olakino.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Briefly, Mr. Speaker, let me appreciate Senator Chute for really bringing a very important statement. A statement that the last time I heard of black fever was looking at countries like India. You know, that's actually where it originates from. And this disease is predominant in areas where there is no health care. Poor nutrition, poor housing. So what is that telling us, Mr. Speaker? We sit here, I'm a member of the Health Committee, my chairman is right here, the distinguished senator from Uasin Gishu County, and we push for money to go to county governments. So why are our people still poor in the 21st century? Why do we have, malnutrition? You know, when you have the black fever, your cough doesn't end, and when you get any small disease, you die. So really, this statement is very, very important. It is important because it now awakens us as a Senate to be able to follow through this money that we are sending to these counties. Senator, the majority whip has clearly indicated this money is being diverted. It's being diverted to other things. Really, we're talking about affordable housing. Affordable housing now should be to those poor areas where they have poor housing facilities. Because when you have those poor housing facilities, this parasite, which really spread heavily because of the dust, easily kills everyone. So what is happening in our northern counties will not stop there, because this parasite thrives in tropical environments. So it will come to Mombasa, it will go to Narok, it will go to Machakos, it will go everywhere. So we must take this very seriously. We cannot have our population dying because of black fever in the 21st century. Mr. Speaker, you know, some of us subscribe to political parties that for many years have been really supporting poor economies. But now, looking forward, I want my political party to be able to bring economic, emancipation of our people. Our people must be emancipated from this poverty. Because that poverty, Mr. Speaker, this Kala-azar, black fever, will be in Kilifi soon. Is that what we really want for our counties? So, Mr. Speaker, I support Senator Chute, and I want to assure him that as a member of the Health Committee, and my chair is here, we will investigate that. We will go and look at all the health facilities in Marsabit. When we look at them, we do a proper audit trail of the money. Because if listen, before the US now says USAID is taking their money, before DFID sends a statement and say, we are taking our money. Because you know what is at risk, and this is what we are discussing this morning when we are considering the budget policy statement, is the additional allocation revenue, which normally goes to support these hospitals. Before that, these hospitals, these counties were getting a lot of money. They were getting a lot of money to improve their health facilities. This House passed a law where instead of each county developing its own, its own fund to be able to use ONSO's revenue, we came up with a law that now allows all counties to be able to use the revolving fund, ONSO's revenue, to improve those hospitals. So this statement, Mr. Speaker, it's one of those statements which I actually say, what Chute should have done is to seek for an ad hoc committee working closely with the health committee to be able to comprise of many senators so that we resolve that problem. Because I remember, and the majority whip has always told me this, prevention is better than cure. So if we don't attack this black fever and we follow all the symptoms and if we stop it, very soon all of us will be standing here and saying we just lost a relative because of black fever. Let's not wait for that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mandago.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. First, let me thank Senator Boni Halwale, the Senator for Kakamega, for actually educating the nation on the effects of Kala-azar if it goes unchecked. Honorable Speaker, I wish to agree with my colleague Senator Ledama that county governments must really apply the money where it matters most. And we would expect that the governor for Marsabit, as we speak today, should have actually moved in a state of emergency to make sure that he initiates prevention program so that the population in Marsabit is not further exposed to the risks that have been said. Honorable Speaker, I'm also happy to note that part of the prevention of this disease is through proper housing, and the government is rolling out an affordable housing program. And Senator Chute, the senator for Marsabit, contributed immensely in his Committee of Housing and Lands about affordable housing in the rural areas. And we want to thank Senator for that. I think that was foresight and is part of what is going to prevent this. Honorable Speaker, let me also comment on the statement of Senator Ledama on the issue of Kemsa and distribution of drugs, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, part of the challenges that we have seen in the past with Kemsa is the process of repackaging the drugs when they are being sent to counties after counties make requisition. Honorable Speaker, that process of repackaging has resulted into some loss of certain quantities of drugs. The other challenge that we have and we've seen in Kemsa, Honorable Speaker, and it emanates from counties and the staff in the health sector, Honorable Speaker, is requisitioning of drugs that can only be prescribed by consultants, by health workers who work in level 1, level 2. And the current structure of distribution, Honorable Speaker, leaves room for pilferage of these drugs, because when Kemsa sends the drugs directly to health facilities, And that health facility has requisitioned the drugs that are supposed to be prescribed by consultants. And a number of times, those drugs are very expensive drugs, Honorable Speaker. Those drugs don't end in those facilities. They are repackaged somewhere in the middle here, and counties lose money. Number two, Honorable Speaker, I find a problem with that kind of distribution because our procurement laws require that for every procurement, there should be an inspection and acceptance committee that inspects to ensure we have the right quantity, we have the right quality, and we have what was ordered. The current arrangement is such that that committee has been rendered useless because it's only the health workers in the facilities that receive the drugs, therefore creating uncertainty in the quantity, quality, and value for money in the counties. And I will give an example, Honorable Speaker. In my county, when I served as a governor, when we got a new CEC, Honorable Speaker, she looked at the budget we had for health. We had already served for 5 years, and we used to have challenges of lack of drugs in our facilities. And we had budgeted for 200 million per year for county government of Uasin Gishu. And the CC said, this money is more than enough. We don't have a sick population in Uasin Gishu. But we said, but there's a problem of drugs not being available in hospitals. When we changed the system from distributing directly to our health facilities to receiving the drugs at the county headquarters, I can tell you, Honorable Speaker, day one there was a standoff between Kemsa, the logistics fellow who was supplying the drugs, and the staff in the county. They didn't want the drugs to be inspected. Only to discover that a consignment we had ordered for about 70 million, what we were receiving was worth just about 30 million. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, even as Kemsa thinks of how drugs are going to be distributed across the country, there must be mechanisms of making sure that the acceptance and inspection committees are in place, even if it means at the facility level. Honorable Speaker, the ERP system that Kemsa sought to acquire, last time they came before our Committee of Health and they informed us that they are in the process of acquiring an ERP system. My problem with the ERP system that Kemsa wants to acquire is the cost. When Kemsa says we want to acquire an ERP system at a cost of 1 billion shillings, Honorable Speaker, some of us have been fortunate to work in the ICT sector, and we know 1 billion can buy probably another 4 ERP systems. I think there's a problem of costing of IT systems in government, and probably because the sector is highly technical and probably we have very few experts, this cost of knowledge of IT seems to be becoming very expensive at the expense of the actual software that is required. I want to urge Kemsa board and management to ensure that they are effective in their costs, they are cost effective, and make sure that every little saving that is available in Kemsa actually goes to drugs, goes to equipment, goes to non-pharmaceuticals that are key in delivering UHC, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, I support the statement by Senator Ledama and Senator Chute that there is need for us as a Senate committee, and not just as a Senate committee, Honorable Speaker. We had even requested as a committee that we would wish that the committee of the whole can be involved in this process of checking what counties. But I want to assure Senator Chute that definitely we are going to invite the governor for Marsabit, but not only invite, we are going to visit Marsabit as a committee to ascertain the status of health facilities in that county, alongside other difficult counties like Isiolo, of course, where governors have decided that they are not answerable to anybody, but we shall remind them that it is their constitutional duty and it is our constitutional responsibility to oversight. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Dulo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me take this opportunity also to support statements by both senators. Mr. Speaker, I think we have to be serious and candidly tell each other that we have failed as a country as far as health services is concerned. Yesterday I was not in the House, but I saw the way the CS was struggling to answer a question on SHA, which meant almost nothing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Kenyans are really suffering as far as healthcare service is concerned.
We are talking about Kemsa delivery to the county referral hospitals. Mr. Speaker, if you go to those counties and you look at the shelves, the only drugs you can find there are the drugs that are not even required by the patients, the drugs that are not supposed even to move. Those are the only drugs that we find on the shelves of those hospitals, Mr. Speaker. And I think, Mr. Speaker, as a Senate, we always talk about committees doing this, doing that. But I think Senator Mandago, having actually interacted with your committee where the governor for Isiolo has taken your committee to court, I know you have a budget for local travel or domestic travel. You need to visit those hospitals within the counties. And your committee should make a commitment, now that we don't have international travels, they should visit the critical hospitals that we have in this country. Mr. Speaker, the other day I went to a Isiolo hospital where a body was left to lie there from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. Just simply they didn't have gloves. You can imagine the hospital officials and the governor saying the body was brought to casualty. How can a body be brought to casualty? Why would a body be received at the casualty? Which law did they apply? Because the bodies are received at the mortuary. And of course, I know very well the mortuary for Isiolo is not working. But for a body to lie there from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., and somebody is arguing, Fatuma is the one who has brought that body there, surely, should I carry the body on my back and bring it to the casualty? Can you imagine? In that casualty room, there are even kids in the next bed who are crying, who are unconscious, and the body is just lying there. We have said over the years, Mr. Speaker, that the national headquarters of Ministry of Health should be in control of the standard of the hospitals within our counties. And that is not happening. Mr. Speaker, you walk to the Ministry of Health and complain about certain issues within our counties. It's like the headquarters, they are fearing the governors. What they tell you is that, oh, governors will say we are interfering with the running of the hospitals. Surely. Where do we run to as Kenyans? Because there are no drugs, there are no service delivery. Yesterday, you can imagine a lady from a place called Olonyiro in Isiolo. She traveled over 100 kilometers to go and get service delivery in Isiolo County Referral Hospital. She's told there are no drugs. I had to send money, 3,000, to buy her drugs in Isiolo. How many other patients are suffering? How many other patients who don't have anybody to run to are suffering? Our hospitals are actually in pathetic situation. Leave alone county referral. The dispensaries, the sub-county hospitals, there are no actually deliveries that are actually safe. Women are suffering. They don't even get reproductive rights. Mr. Speaker, something needs to be done in this country. And I request Senator Mandago, you are listening to me. I know you have a budget for domestic travel. Can you sample the counties that have problems? Please visit those counties and ensure that you have put them actually on accountability. Mr. Speaker, we cannot sit here every day talk about these and that are not happening in our counties. Something must be done. Somebody should be held accountable. You can imagine pending bills are not even being paid. And yet, if you look at the budget of counties, you will see that the health department is the one that is taking the chunk of the budget allocated to the counties. But those counties, they don't even use that money. They don't even know where it goes. They don't know even where the drugs are even procured. Even the chief officers, the procurement department, they don't know how procuring those things are being done. We blame here Kemsa, but sometimes you will find that they are even buying drugs across the counter. Most of the counties. Mr. Speaker, we have to have a serious conversation as far as healthcare services is concerned in this country. Because, as Senator Veronica was saying, most of us, we went to government hospitals when we were young. and even at early age in our lives. But today, you can't find anything in those hospitals. No syringes, no Panadols, no antibiotics. They are not there. And yet, budget is being, we are fighting always here to allocate money to the counties. Mr. Speaker, I think we have to have a serious conversation as far as service delivery is concerned in the health sector. And I hope Senator Mandago and the committee will take a lead in this to ensure that there is sanity in healthcare services in our counties. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Wafula.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to request my good friend from Nyandarua to come slow. The mountain is quite slippery. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Speaker, what is emerging here is a can of worms, Honorable Speaker. And I think the Health Committee is bound to open a wardrobe of skeletons if we are committed to deal with this matter. Honorable Speaker, we need to, as agreed as a Committee of Health, the requisitions that are always made by the health facilities in counties, once the requisitions are made to the executive of the counties, Honorable Speaker, the things procured are totally different from what the health practitioners at the grassroots levels request. And once those requisitions are changed, again what they receive is totally different from what the executive requested from Kemsa. You can imagine, Honorable Speaker, in Bungoma, I visited a facility in Kamukuywa. I visited another one in Webuye East in Divisi. I visited a facility in Kabuchai in Kimalewa. I visited a facility in Bumula called Hasoko. And what I saw, Honorable Speaker, and one in Kandui constituency in an area called Mwirupo, what I saw in the stores, in the warehouses, was shocking and perturbing. Honorable Speaker, you can imagine facilities not having received medical supplies for over 10 months. And when you ask, people fidget around and want to talk as if they are strangers in Jerusalem. It is prudent for this committee, Honorable Speaker, that the executive, the ministries of health, should furnish us with the details of requisitions from the health facilities at the grassroots level, what they requested from Kemsa, and Kemsa must furnish us what they supplied to the counties and exactly what was sent to the specific health facilities at the grassroots level. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, when these medicines are being received, you see trucks and trucks of vehicles with a big flag, with people in ties, with people in lab coats, but only 1 or 2 boxes are opened. When you check in there, Honorable Speaker, you'll realize over half of those trucks have nothing else but boxes that are empty. And people are made to celebrate and clap. Time is up, Honorable Speaker, that the patient of the Republic of Kenya is confident enough to visit our health facilities because their medicine, because the doctors are well enumerated, because doctors are respected, and because the contracts given therefore by the executive can be documents that people can stand with and be proud of. And therefore I want to concur with honorable members. It is a collective responsibility that wherever we come from, we keep stock of what is happening across the country. I want to also support statement by Honorable Chute about this black fever. It is quite shocking, Honorable Speaker, that it takes a senator to come here. We have an executive in that county. We have directors in that county. We have a governor in that county. We have ward representatives in that county. We have ward administrators in that county. Why are we paying them salaries if they cannot stand up and blow the whistle that things are not going in the right direction? We have to turn around this country, Honorable Speaker, and not only by speaking. And I want to request the leadership of the Senate. They should allocate more resources to committees that are hands-on, to committees that reach out to Kenyans, to committees that deal with the backbone of health, food, and security in this country. And that is why this year, yours truly, the Senator for Bungoma, is equally inviting the Committee for Health to come. Because people of Bungoma pay taxes. People of Bungoma expect better services. And when we speak, people must listen. And not only listening, they must understand that there must be value for money for the people of Kenya. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Matthew John Mohe.
Maybe I can use this mic. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Finally, I've been waiting because I want to make my comment. And if you indulge me, Honorable Speaker, I also want to thank you very much for leading us and the team from the Senate for the prayers that we had at Senator Cheptumo's home. There's a lot of compassion, and you led us well. And you also led us when we went for his memorial earlier today at the AIC Milimani Church. Honorable Speaker, the reason why this statement that has been sought by the leader of the minority whip, or to my understanding, why he sought this particular statement is because we had the Minister for Health yesterday here. Amongst all the functions that have been devolved to counties, Honorable Speaker, it is my opinion that the most critical of all the functions that have been devolved would be health, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, just as my colleagues are wondering, why would the governors take, or why would county establishments take these matters very, very casually? And I think in the statement, Senator Redama has tried to diagnose the problem. And there are two issues that are coming out very, very clearly, Honorable Speaker. That counties who are the end user, especially of drugs that and pharmaceutical products from Kemsa, the counties are the end user and they bear the brunt and they bear the burden, Honorable Speaker, especially, Honorable Speaker, when drugs do not even get to the counties, Honorable Speaker. And even number two, there is another critical matter, Honorable Speaker. When drugs expire, when equipments that have been supplied by Kemsa are obsolete, or when when they cannot be used, Honorable Speaker, by counties, who bears this brunt of paying this, of these particular services, Honorable Speaker? It is the counties. Who are the counties? These are the people. Number two, Honorable Speaker, when exchequer releases are late, would you want to tell me that drugs can wait until we get money from the exchequer, Honorable Speaker? It is not possible. The proposal that has been brought by Senator Redama is that let Kemsa be a supermarket, Honorable Speaker. Pharmaceutical companies should bring their pharmaceutical products, and if they have been used, then they can be paid. We pay what we have used for, not that we pay what has been delivered. Because as Senator Fura has actually correctly diagnosed, sometimes we actually pay for empty boxes, Honorable Speaker. When you walk to our hospitals, Honorable Speaker, there are no, there are no pharmaceutical products, Honorable Speaker. There's no medicine in hospitals, Honorable Speaker. It is the same problem in every county, Honorable Speaker. In fact, I was challenged by a young man, Honorable Speaker, that they went to see a doctor at a level 3 hospital at a health facility, Honorable Speaker. And the only thing that was in that particular health facility that looked like medicine or that looked like a pharmaceutical product was the free condoms that are offered, Honorable Speaker, by the government, Honorable Speaker. It cannot be that, Honorable Speaker, that we cannot take seriously the health of the people of Kenya. Finally, I have seen that there is a proposal, and I don't know whether it has been brought either to this House or the House, the National Assembly, Honorable Speaker, that for health facilities, public health facilities to actually be more effective, to be more efficient, that why can't we force especially leaders and civil servants that they must be getting services from public health facilities, Honorable Speaker. And it makes me think, now that there is no rule that requires our forces, civil servants and leaders and the politicians and the high and mighty in the society, that we must take our children to public secondary schools, Honorable Speaker, why is it that we fight very hard to take our children to Mang? It is a public school. Why is it that we fight very hard to take our children to Nenana? It's a public school. Why is it that we fight very hard to take our children to Alliance? It's a public school. There is no law that requires our officers to take our children there. Why? Because the services that are provided in those institutions of learning, Honorable Speaker, are so premium. Why can't we make services in our public health facilities as premium as those secondary schools, Honorable Speaker, such that it will just be obvious that the only, the easiest way of getting health services, Honorable Speaker, would be from public health facilities because they are very good, they have been made very well. Finally, I don't think we have a deficiency in the laws and policies that, especially we as a House, fingers cannot be pointed to the Senate, Honorable Speaker, saying that we are deficient of laws or we are deficient of policies, Honorable Speaker. It must be remembered that this House has passed the Facility Improvement Fund so that all the monies that are collected in hospitals are used especially for those hospitals, Honorable Speaker. So if we have been able to help governors to that extent, why are we still struggling with issues to do with drugs in hospitals, Honorable Speaker? Our county governors must ensure that they put their best foot forward, especially on this matter of health, Honorable Speaker. Maybe on water, people can wait a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Anyway, they have been waiting since 1963. Maybe on the other issues of vocational training, maybe people can wait or they can go to the neighboring vocational training facility, Honorable Speaker. But for health, it cannot wait. You need that service there and then. When you need that medicine, it is there and then. If I am having a headache, Honorable Speaker, now, and you want to provide the medicine next week, it will not be helpful. The utility of that medicine to me as a person, to me as a user, will not be helpful that time, Honorable Speaker. I thank you very much. Asante sana.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. Senator Okoit Andrew Mutata.
Madam Speaker, good afternoon and thank you for the opportunity to address this House on this very important statement. Matters health in this country, Madam Speaker, have gone south. There's nothing basically to write home about. And when it comes to, before even we discuss about the drugs, you might want to know the capacities of the personnel who are in these hospitals. You'll be shocked that many hospitals are not properly manned, and patients go there and are not given the treatment they require. But besides that, when we come to the question of drugs or medicines, you wonder why. You know, you have tried to put in all these checks and controls, a lot of software, what have you, people talk this, people talk that. They want delivery notes, they want whatever. They might even want x-rays of patients who have swallowed those medicines. But when we were growing up, there used to be a very simple method of ensuring that government stores are not stolen. It was called branding. A government Panadol was inscribed with the letters GOK. And so were government gloves, bottles, and what have you. What is so difficult for Kemsa to have manufacturers brand government stores so that when the supplies are made, it's inbuilt in the drug that you cannot steal it. You cannot go and take a drug from the government store and put it in a private pharmacy. Why can that simple thing be done? Why are we making life to look so difficult? And you can be sure that whoever removed that branding of government stores was opening the floodgates for the theft we feel today. It's not an accident that in this country, people who live in mansions
are largely people who work with the government, either as politicians or as civil servants or government contractors. You will hardly find any wealth being created away from government. And it's not just in health, but in all other sectors. It's like the Kenyan taxpayer has totally nothing to protect them from the greed of those in power. So, Madam Speaker, I would really urge that this House pushes for a policy whereby government stores are branded. Let me go to the clinic, and if I don't find drugs that the government has supplied, let it be that the government has not supplied. It should not be that I've gone to the clinic, the government has supplied drugs, but somebody else has taken them out and put them into a private shop, into a private pharmacy. Madam Speaker, I would really urge that we try to do the common sense thing, the simple things that have worked, we go back and do them. Point number 3, request that we provide details on the enterprise resource planning, the ERP software, currently in use at Kemsa, disclosing its vendors. Now, I saw Senator Mandago mention a question of 1 billion and how much it can do in terms of ERP. But we are here whereby we are spending a lot of money acquiring a ERP system under the SHA. The SHA is not applying any product, they're just applying a platform, and it's running into billions of shillings, inclusive of taxes. We are going to acquire an ERP to run the SHA system, which includes Kemsa and others, at a whooping 104 billion shillings. 104 billion shillings. If that is taken against what Senator Mandago, the chairman of the committee, submitted, then you'll realize that we are just being scammed. There's no justification for this very high cost that we get. The other day I was in Kilifi, and when interacting with the villagers in Sangatini, I came across a very, very sad story. And the story was that a lady was bitten by a cobra. And they picked the lady, somebody picked the lady about a border, put her on a motorcycle and rushed her to the hospital in Mariakani. Only for the lady to arrive and she was asked whether she was in SHA or not. And they required the ID. So the border had run back to look for the ID. By the time he came back, she had succumbed to the snake bite. That is how sorry the question of medicine is in this country. That there is no humanity in the provision of health care in this country, that you can die just because people do not understand that you are a human being, and there's something called emergency health care, which is a right that you must get emergency health care when you need it. When you go to my own county of Busia, nothing is working. The hospitals are not working. There are no drugs. The medical personnel are demoralized. Nothing seems to work. There was a case in Amkura dispensary where a woman who was to deliver twins died because they did not seem to know that she was carrying twins. How that happened, I don't know. She delivered one child. The other child remained in the womb. And it led to complications whereby this lady had to die, only to be discovered at postmortem that she had another child who had remained in the womb. How does that happen in a government hospital? How can you not know that a mother is carrying 2 babies or 3? These things, what is happening in this country is very, very sad and it's unacceptable. In my own county of Busia, the big shame is that people are flocking across the border into Uganda, in Mutembei to get treatment. Kenyans are crossing the border into Uganda, those who live around the border and near the border, into Mutembei to get attention, to get treated, into Tororo to get treated, and our hospitals are there. Busia is a frontier county, and not just a frontier county of any nature. It's a frontier county to the East and Central Africa region, where we have got occasional outbreaks of very, very bad diseases like Ebola and what have you. My legitimate expectation would be that the national government would be running very, very serious laboratories in Busia, would be having a very good surveillance system in Busia to protect the Republic from any entry of patients who might be carrying these contagious diseases. But nothing is working. There's been no attention given. We have hospitals, our level 4 hospitals in terms of mother and child are just death traps. Very many women in Busia are dying in childbirth. Why should that be the case? It's the case because health is totally neglected. Health has become an area for merchants to make wealth, to steal public resources, and it's very easy to steal through health. So I pray that this House consider some very, very stern measures to intervene in health. As regards human personnel, during the process of making the new constitution, the review process, there had been created a National Health Commission and a health service commission to operate nationally to take care of the needs of medical personnel. But you find that when the matter went to Naivasha, it was removed. But when the Parliamentary Service Commission removed, the Parliamentary Service Committee in Naivasha removed the provision of the Health Service Commission, it undertook in writing, and it's in the record, that they said Parliament would establish that commission through legislation to take care of the needs of medical personnel nationally, so that we are able to move doctors across the country and cross around and to be able to give them the chance to go on sabbatical, to go whatever. You found that the account is so tiny for somebody who takes so long to train to comfortably operate in. So this lack of interest in the work, in their work that most of some medical personnel exude, is largely due to the fact that there is hopelessness there. the chances for growth are not there because you are packaged into a small county. You answer to people who may not even understand what your needs are. And so I would be urging this House that we consider going back and cashing that promissory note that we gave to the doctors. Parliament undertook to establish a national health commission so that doctors are not subjected to counties. It's in writing, the reports are there. We are now going to 14 years, to the 15th year, since with the proclamation of the Constitution, nothing has happened. And so, as my contribution to this statement, I would also urge that we look at the human resource, how the human resource is managed. It's very clear that the county governments cannot handle the human resource in the medical sector. Let the county governments maybe run the hospitals, but let us set up that commission, which was removed by Parliament from the Constitution, the draft Constitution, with an undertaking that they are going to establish that commission by an act of Parliament. Let us proceed and create the equivalent of a TAC for the medical sector so that doctors can be hired centrally in Nairobi, dispersed across the country centrally, and transferred and moved across so that they can gain experience wherever, be able to go on sabbatical, be able to progress in their careers, be able to have hope, and be able to be cushioned from the question of counties not having money and not being able to pay. So, Madam Speaker, I support this motion, and
it's a statement, Honorable Senator.
Sorry.
And please wind up your remarks so that we can move to
I was
the
waiting
next
for the
order.
lights. We don't have lights today.
We are about to put it, just wind it now in 30 seconds.
Okay. So I support this statement by Senator Olekina, but I pray that we amend it to include the issues I've raised and others have raised, so that we can seize the opportunity to address what is really ailing the health sector in this country. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator. Next order.
Order number 8, motion, report of the Mediation Committee on the Conflict of Interest Bill, National Assembly Bills number 12 of 2023, resumption of debate.
Senator Okia, before you walk out, you were the one on your feet when this motion was last adjourned. So you had a balance of 17 minutes. Do you still wish to utilize them?
Yes.
Proceed.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. On the conflict of interest bill, I had risen up, when the time caught up with me, I was just at the point where I was saying that the institutions that we have given a chance to do whatever to ensure that conflict of interest is addressed include the EACC, and now we are trying to push, according to this act, almost all matters of conflict of interest will fall under the EACC. But when I look at Chapter 6 of the Constitution, the few articles there, and you look at especially Article 73 and Article 75, there's a question of conflict of interest arises, which clearly puts this mandate under the functions of the EACC under Article Article 79, where the AICC is created to enforce Chapter 6. And one of the things under Chapter 6 is conflict of interest. Conflict of interest only becomes a problem on how it is handled. It's not intrinsically bad. That's why you are told that if you have a conflict of interest in a matter, you can pronounce that interest, and either you can recuse yourself from a proceeding and stuff like that. Conflict of interest is also a major issue when it comes to determining disputes and whatever, especially for judicial officers where they are conflicted. They will tend to say, okay, I can't sit on this matter because my judgment might be clouded by certain factors that make me a conflicted person. So that for me is a good development, and within the core competence of the EACC to address. But a matter of another issue that we may need to address is the capacity of the EACC. Because the EACC still implements the ASECA, the anti-corruption law, of I think 2003, which created it as a crime-fighting entity, as an entity to fight crime. But when you come to Article 79, in the new constitution, the EACC is not created to fight crime. The EACC is created to enforce a code of conduct, which is Chapter 6. It's purely a code of conduct. But now, because of the act being given, and the code of conduct is largely preventive. It's supposed to prevent a problem from occurring. They should be able to come and look at systems and ensure these things like conflict of interest are not there. People are smartly dressed. People are reporting to work on time. People are not disappearing from their stations of work. They are serving the public and stuff like that. They don't run. The people are not running what I would call, offshore accounts. Or people, state officers are not employed, earning several salaries and things like those. But instead, the EACC has forgotten that. It has gone into things fighting crime is more, I don't know that it's more media friendly or something, because you see them chasing policemen who have taken some bribe and stuff. So I would really urge that the EACC now that is taking on this heavy task of being the sole custodian of that conflict of interest, which is an issue under Chapter 6, which really is their mandate, we should consider whether the EACC has any role to play as a law, as a criminal, as an organ of enforcing criminal law. That, I would say that Parliament would then go and under the Constitution, I think Article 247 or something around there, they can set up special police units. The question of theft of public funds must be dealt with by a uniformed force, not a civilian contraption like the EACC. We need a uniformed force to deal with it. The CID already have an economic crimes desk. Let us beef it up and let the law, the enforcement of criminal law remain within the ambits of the National Police Service. Let the EACC do what they were created to do in the Constitution to enforce the Code of Conduct, which is Chapter 6. And as a House, we need to look at the ASECA and see whether it is still a good law, the way it is framed, or we need to put the ASECA under the enforcement of the police and put up, if we need be, a uniformed police unit to deal with the theft of public funds. Leaving that critical issue to a civilian formation will not get very far. And as you can see, big crime in this country is hardly punished. The EACC itself hardly, I've never seen a report of the EACC where they have gone into the budgets of be it a county government or a budget of the national government to interrogate and ferret out budgeted corruption. I've never seen that happen. And yet that for me would be an area whereby they would be acting proactively to prevent abuse of office. When the Eurobond happened, and it became hot in 2015, the EACC undertook to conduct an investigation and give us a report. Up until today, no report from the EACC has come on the Eurobond, where as matters stand today, 7.2 billion US dollars are not visible in public records. The EACC has done nothing about that. Instead, they are clamoring for more. They have clamored for this. Okay, Parliament has given them. They review the report on the conflict of interest bill is good. We are going to pass this bill. We are going to give them those powers. But are they going to be of any capacity? Are they going to do anything with it? In fact, in some of our counties today, the EACC has become a laughing stock. They have become a laughing stock to a point whereby county officials will tell you, okay, go to the EACC. We'll sort them out when they come. They have become a laughable entity that has not even cracked most of the issues that come up. Personally, I've taken so many cases to the EACC, but they just evaporate. They delay, then they evaporate. And I'm seeing the same. This conflict of interest might just be another opportunity for rent seekers to run wild in this country, wearing badges of the EACC. So, Madam Speaker, it's my plea that we take a sober look at the EACC and strip it of the powers that allow it to be the forum where theft by servant is criminalized. Theft by servant is not criminalized. It's not criminalized. Sorry, I said it was criminalized, but it's not criminalized. But it's sanitized by being mischaracterized as corruption. The word corruption does not carry the same sting that the word theft carries, even in the English language itself. Let alone the fact that in our mother tongue, we don't have the word for corruption. In Swahili, we have got a word called ufisadi, but I saw the other day somebody in Tanzania, one of the leaders in Tanzania said that that's an invention it was invented by Kenyans, the word ufisadi, but we have got Swahili scholars like Senator Wakoli here who can assist us understand whether ufisadi is a sheng thing or ufisadi is really a proper Swahili word. Because the Tanzanians say that is something that came from Kenya. So I would request that I be informed briefly before I continue contributing.
You would want to inform
Yes.
him? Okay.
Honorable Speaker, the other term for fisadi ni mulungula, kuchukua hongo ama rushwa. Vyote hivi ama haya yote ni maneno ya visawe kuashiria kwamba hongo, rushwa, murungura ni donda sugu katika taasisi ya afya katika nchi ya Kenya. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
I couldn't put it better. Thank you for the information. And so, you see, when terms become that difficult, then there's a problem. We should just call these things theft. Theft by servant, and theft should be handled by the police. When I steal a chicken, I'm not accused of corruption. When I steal $1 billion, I'm accused of corruption. I don't understand it. This is technically a way of saying that we create two laws for the citizens of Kenya, one for the rich and well-connected, and another one for the small people. So that those people who steal from the wagon are called thieves. But those who steal the whole train, plus the railway line, are called corrupt. And then you try to look for corruption in the penal code, it becomes tricky. So it is my plea, Madam Speaker, that anti-corruption should be limited to matters of ethics. I would want a situation whereby the EACC would operate like a meat inspector. When a meat inspector goes to a butchery and finds meat unfit for human consumption being sold, they don't take over the police work. They call the police to the site and let the police take over the criminal aspect of the issue. Let the EACC also, in terms of investigating corruption, ensure the enforcement of Chapter 6. But where they encounter criminality, let them hand that over to the police. And it's upon this House to enact legislation that will align the SECA with the police, so that the DCI, or if you can, under Article 247, you can form a new police unit to deal exclusively with corruption. It will help us. Civilians will not be able to stop the theft of public funds. Let us give it to uniformed police, and that goes to the question of even the medicines. Let the uniformed police be able to enter these hospitals where medicines are missing and take action, not the anti-corruption. With those few remarks, I support the report that came from the joint committee, joint committee of the two houses, recommending the passing of the conflict of interest bill. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Well, thank you, Senator. Okay. We have Majority Leader, Senator Cheruiyot Arun.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to also add my voice to this report on mediation committee of the conflict of interest bill. This is an interesting bill, Mr. Speaker, because the way it has gone through both houses of parliament ended up with a mediation committee, of course, after a protracted battle here in the battle, first between members, and second and most importantly, between this House specifically and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. You will recall that it was on the basis of this law, Madam Speaker, that EACC issued actually a communique trying to, at the time, and I still hold the view to this day, that that was a disparage on this House, founded on misunderstanding of what was the reasoning behind the proposed deletions and amendments that had been proposed by our Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. And after that, Mr. Speaker, of course, they duly apologized and appeared and gave their proposal. Because, Madam Speaker, we as a House pass laws in the best interest of the country. We may not have entirely the full view of every particular item that comes before this House. But at least I know for a fact that every time this House sits down to legislate, we do it in the best interest of the country. And that is why we are a lawmaking house. The conflict of interest bill is no exception. We were told at the time by EACC that perhaps this is the only missing jigsaw in the puzzle for them to vanquish the dragon of corruption in this country. And I was excited about that because I said, then we must give it to them, Madam Speaker, because corruption destroys nations. Nations rise and fall on account of their ability to fight corruption. There is no debate on where Kenya would have been today, Madam Speaker, if it were not for the corrupt practices that have deeply rooted and ingrained in the culture and societal fabric of the Kenyan people, Madam Speaker. And until the day we are able to finally slay this dragon, Madam Speaker, we shall continue to be an average country, punching way below its weight on account of the fact that ours is a rigged system. When we had the invention in Parliament, Madam Speaker, and we passed that motion that broke ranks and members spoke as one house, Madam Speaker, part of the recommendations that we spoke to on that particular day was the need to sit with the EACC and listen to them on their proposal on what is it that holds them back from making Kenya a corrupt-free country. Because I believe, Madam Speaker, that this is a country of immense potential. This is a country that can achieve great things. This is a country that many people will admire to live, work in, and thrive. Only held back by corruption, amongst other things. But I believe the rest are subsets. The biggest challenge that we continue to face as a nation is this challenge of corruption. So when EACC wrote to our Justice and Legal Affairs Committee and made their proposals, I am glad that as a committee you listened to them. I am even happier that at the mediation stage, many of the views which they felt that they didn't agree with the amendments that we had done on the floor of this House, Madam Speaker, many have either been dropped or moderated to get the view of what EACC wants and also how our colleagues from the National Assembly perceived that particular matter. And therefore, before us, Madam Speaker, we have a report actually that has dealt with all the controversial 88 clauses, things which we had touched here and there. The thinking at that particular time of the Senate, Madam Speaker, is that we felt that there was a lot of repetition on the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act, Madam Speaker, leadership and integrity, so many acts that were trying to do the same thing. And therefore, many of the deletions that were done by the Senate at that particular time, Madam Speaker, were aimed actually at streamlining so that we give EACC a cleaner document upon which they can refer to and ensure that they save us as a country. Therefore, I'm happy that today we are discussing the mediated version. I know our colleagues in the National Assembly have concluded on this exercise, and therefore it is only us that are remaining, so that once we conclude on this particular exercise, Madam Speaker, hopefully, as soon as we pass it, it can be assented into law. It's my hope that by Tuesday next week, members will be available in the House so that we pass this particular report, Madam Speaker, and proceed to do other things. Madam Speaker, on Tuesday this week, I had breakfast with an 83-year-old lady. She's of Swedish descent, but has lived in Kenya the last 44 years. So she's actually more Kenyan than myself because I haven't seen that number of years in this country. She knows more about my country. And she told me a very sad story, which I left the breakfast table particularly disturbed. This lady works in the affordable housing space and has been here working on UN programs and so on and so forth. And she reminded me that when the international bodies began this conversation on the need for decent homes for the poor, especially in urban areas, back in the early 80s, Madam Speaker, that there was a fund that was created. And many African nations, after struggling with how to set it up, it collected quite some substantial amount, and they did projects in various African countries. But after some point, that program did not take off And therefore, it was resolved at the final meeting. I forget the exact name of that particular fund. But at the final meeting, it was resolved that the member countries carry on the program in their own, through their own budgetary support and proceed. Then it was passed also that the assets that had been reviewed or received from that particular program should pass on to the members of the public. He told me that there are only 2 African countries which did not transfer those assets to their government. They ended up in the pockets of the program officers. Burundi, which at that time was at war, so we can classify it as a war-torn country at that particular time, and your guess is as good as mine, Kenya. And so that is a story of many government interventions and programs that up to date, this country continues to suffer, be it the county government, national government, private entities, Madam Speaker, even workers in our own farms. The fellow you employ to take care of your chicken back in Muranga, you know, they don't appreciate that if the chicken are laying 45 trays of eggs per week and they reduce it to 40, that is a form of corruption. In Kenya, it is considered being street smart. Yet, like Senator Mtata said, and I agree with him, perhaps we should first ban the word corruption. That is where the problem begins. It should be called what it is. It should be referred to as theft. You know? ESCC should be something like Ethics and Anti-Theft Commission. This thing called corruption already is a problem because many people think it's a sanitized word. You know, to be accused of corruption is not as bad as being accused of theft. And many people don't distinguish. Therefore, maybe we will have that conversation. But the problem is deeper than the name. It's not just about what it is referred to. It is about our values. And what is it that we can train in our society, beginning with the young children, so that they are perhaps a better society than what we are. Because the generation ahead of mine, my own generation, that is immediately behind, and those that are coming after, Madam Speaker, if we don't take care, then we will not have a country to write home about. All these countries that we read about in the rest of the world, that there used to be a country called XYZ, that they have been destroyed and it has come to an end. It is on account. In fact, the biggest threat that any society or nation faces, I dare say, is not even threat from terrorists. It's not even threat from internal implosion based on lack of opportunities and resources. It is this issue of corruption. And it is my hope, Madam Speaker, that upon consideration of each of these 88 clauses as amended, we shall make significant strides towards achieving this fight that every Kenyan wishes that we didn't have. But unfortunately, many of the citizens that we know, starting with the leadership to the ordinary citizens.
Senator Methu, do you understand the courtesies that are supposed to be played in the House? Can you do the necessary?
I know you don't have your specs, Madam Speaker, but this is Senator Joe Nyoto, not Methu.
Oh, sorry, Senator Joe Nyoto, sorry. I need to use my specs in the House. Please do the courtesies.
Okay.
You had already started making your way to where you normally sit, then you casually cross to the opposite.
So, can I proceed, Madam Speaker? Yes. So, saying, this thing should bother us, and it must disturb any leader that we continue to talk about it, but there is very little that is being done. A few weeks ago, Madam Speaker, when one of the 7 top decision-making members of it's called the Chinese, I forget the exact name, political bureau or something, visited the country. As part of his delegation, there was a gentleman whose equivalent in Kenya will be the CEO of the ESCC. He was part of his traveling delegation. And when we sat down at the state banquet that was held in the honor of that visiting delegation, I sat next to him. And we had conversations about what he does, and there are a few things that he shared with me. He told me that in the Chinese society, they have 3 strategies that they have used to fight corruption. And they said we classify the corrupt in 3 categories. The tigers, I forget the second one, and the last one was a dragon or an insect. And they said the tigers are people like you and me, the high and mighty, those that serve in big public offices. And they said that is where they dedicate their biggest energy and resources. And the reason being, they are used to create an example to the ordinary citizen, where when they are arrested or when they are found culpable, and you have watched how they even proscribe death penalty on very high-ranking public officials, including ministers, the minute they are found to have participated in theft of public resources, Madam Speaker. And he said that strategy has continued to work because it sets an example to other people. I believe that the day we shall be able to jail a few senior public officials, then the war against corruption will take the right trajectory. But so long as it is known that once you've been caught and you're convicted, the lower court will perhaps hand you a verdict, then you'll move to the high court, you'll get a reprieve, you will be released. There must be a reasoned argument, especially, Madam Speaker, where there is involvement of loss of public funds before a judge issues a reprieve against, say, the magistrate's court.